Today on Beyond 6 Seconds.
People say, well, you know so much about Feng Shui, how come you can't avoid all those bad things? Well, you can't. Feng Shui is not about protecting you. It's not a lucky charm, but it does help me and it helps everybody handle situations because the positive energy that I develop for myself in my own home nurtures me and gives me the support that I need.
Welcome to Beyond 6 Seconds, the podcast that goes beyond the 6-second first impression to share the extraordinary stories and achievements of everyday people. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel. On today's episode, I'm speaking with Cyd Alper-Sedgwick. Cyd is a Feng Shui Master based in Cincinnati, and she's considered one of the most intuitive of practitioners. With clients throughout the U.S. and Europe, she has a passion for healing buildings and, consequently, the people in the buildings. A second-generation Feng Shui practitioner, she also brings her expertise as an interior designer into her consultations. Cyd, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm so delighted to be here.
I'm really happy to have you here today. Tell me about your path to becoming a Feng Shui master.
Actually, it started at a very, very early age. I lived out in I don't think we can say Far East anymore, in Asia, from being a tiny baby for a good part of my earlier life. And, with Chinese nannies, et cetera, it was just a very natural progression into living the life where each of our homes was always Feng Shui based. And my mother, learned a tremendous amount of Feng Shui living out in Asia as well. And it's sort of very interesting because to me, I just cannot imagine how anybody moves into a home or purchases a home, buys a home, rents a home, sells a home without the benefit of Feng Shui. And I think that's a very, very important part of my life. To me, it's like breathing. It's oxygen. So, even a hotel room, I will adjust a hotel room if I need to in order to make sure that the positive flow of energy is harmonic and is beneficial to me for the rest of the evening.
Wow. So it really extends into all different spaces, all different types of buildings, that's really important to make sure that the energy's in the right place.
Absolutely, it does. And, I work with a lot of different buildings, and that's why the form of Feng Shui that I practice, and incidentally, there are 8 different schools of Feng Shui, but my belief is that 7 of those are not really compatible with the West because we have so many different shaped buildings facing in different directions. So this form of Feng Shui is very gentle and is more movable. So, you can Feng Shui your desk, you can Feng Shui your store. There's all kinds of things that you can do without being concerned of whether or not it's facing east or west or north or south. We can put cures in place that will really draw in the positive energy.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, well, I do say to my clients, please choose the Feng Shui school that you're most comfortable with, and then stick with that. I just happen to do pure Feng Shui that doesn't take a little bit of this and a little bit of that, Feng Shui books, unless it's actually stipulating one school of Feng Shui. They generally are very generic, and people who use those books, they're doing the best they can with what they can, but it's usually not a good idea to do it unless you know that the book that you are using is one school only.
Because you can't mix the different practices and the different schools.
No, you can't. And I'm often called in to sort of tidy up the mess that has been made because somebody has followed something and didn't fully understand it. And it's a little bit like, we go to the doctor if we have a pain, and only the doctor can really tell us what that pain represents. But there's no point the doctor or me just putting a Band-Aid on a leg that has no wound, because that's what I'm doing when I'm doing Feng Shui from a book that has lots of different forms of Feng Shui within that book.
Oh, okay.
So, that's why it's advisable to find a good Feng Shui practitioner locally. And there are many, Feng Shui practitioners, not so much in this area, but there are all over the country. And this is why I travel the country, because I bring in this little bit of extra care and attention and working very closely with the essence of each of my clients, not only the essence of the client, but the essence of the family or the essence of the business.
I see. So in your bio, you mentioned that you're a second generation Feng Shui master or practitioner. Was your mother the first generation?
Yes, she was. We traveled the world and she never, ever lived in a house that she did not, made sure that everything to that house was exactly what needed it to be for the harmonic prosperity for all of us, for the family. And she was very creative. I mean, she was incredible. And I think this is where I and my sister, where we get this ability to put colors together that nobody else would think about putting together, and placement of furniture, which is just a teeny weeny drop of water in the Feng Shui process. It's all the ins and outs that are very, very important for the actual positive flow that is very essential for any building.
I see. As you and your sister had learned from her, was it like a study, or was it more observing and intuitively learning through watching her practice?
I think it was more intuitive, and I think it was, and this is where I particularly built my intuition, because she encouraged that. My sister went in a different direction, but because I was older, I had more interest in what my mother was doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that had an impact on me, because it always amazed me that no matter where we were in the world, she created a beautiful home that was very harmonic. And we lived in some very odd places at various times, because my father was in the British Army. And we traveled constantly. Every 2 years or so, we moved to either a new country or a new part of a country.
Wow. So yeah, I could see what kind of an impact that would have on your childhood, and always finding different environments to adjust to. So yeah, it would be important to make sure that they're all balanced.
Yes, and I think that also makes it very easy for me not to be tied up with stuff. Because we had to, my mother, if we had certain things in a particular house, they were left behind. We never took those things to another house. So, and I have the same philosophy that a piece of furniture that you buy for one house invariably does not fit well in the next house. But I have no problem releasing material things whatsoever. I even sold the entire contents of my house in 2011. And that included everything I owned except my bed and a television.
Wow.
It felt glorious, having nothing to be concerned about. And I lived like that for 6 months in my house until I couldn't sit on the floor any longer. I bought a sofa. But, people are surrounded by stuff, and they're surrounded by their memories, et cetera, But my experience is the memories never go away. I don't need to be reminded of something, by a piece of paper or a photograph or a book, because all my memories are very vivid to me and they're stored in my head. It's like I used to do photography. But then I realized I was so busy taking photographs, I was missing out on what I was supposed to be looking at. And so I stopped even doing that and committing everything to memory.
Wow. We tend to put a lot of value on stuff, certainly in U.S. and possibly other Western cultures. Stuff, it's comforting, but it can be stressful too, depending on how much and where it is and what it is.
Yeah, I think if you have a lot of stuff that maybe you've inherited or it has a certain value, then you also have the responsibility of that stuff. And in the way I looked at it, the auction house were astounded that they appeared to think that I had no attachment to the stuff, but I did, but I was prepared to give it up to wardship to somebody else to take care of and to hand on wherever they were going to hand it on. And I think that's the essence of Feng Shui, is not being burdened with things that we could easily live without. And so, simplifying your home or your office or even the inside of your car, it sort of feels so good. It's a bit like, when you come home all hot and sticky and you can't wait to take all your clothes off and stand in the shower. And then when you're standing in the shower, you go, oh, that feels much better. So you're not encumbered in any way. and you don't have all this stuff that's weighing you down that you're carrying around.
Yeah, definitely. And that brings up a good point is I think the popular image of Feng Shui can be pretty superficial. I think a lot of people probably just think it's about rearranging your furniture a certain way. But I understand from you that it goes much deeper than that. So how do you describe Feng Shui to your clients?
Yes, and this is a really big one because Feng Shui has been diluted a great many times. And I think that was for convenience of understanding it. But Feng Shui done correctly and learned correctly is a science. And, you're dealing with the quantum physics of positive energy. So it can be very superficial, like everything. But if you really want to dig into the depths of any blockages in your life, generally speaking, in our homes and in our offices, in our building, any of those places, then, you really need to look very, very carefully as to what those blockages are. I mean, the meaning of Feng Shui is wind and water, and we need the wind to travel around the globe or the universe to bring things to us, to take things away. We need the water for the flow, and that's either healing or it's very dangerous. But we also know that it's transitional. So wind and water is basically what Feng Shui means. And it's about movement. It's about traveling. It's about clearing things out. It's about allowing things to grow. So we need the wind to carry the seed. We need the water to feed the seed so that we have a tree, etc. So that tree eventually will be cut down to help us on so many levels. So our homes are actually based from everything that we take from the soil, everything that we take from the earth, whether it's the clay for the bricks, the wood for the decks, the window frames, the metal in our piping, all those things that all come from the earth. And so your home is a living thing. So, when I speak to clients, it's a case of Feng Shui is like a very tall chocolate gâteau cake. Doesn't that sound wonderful?
Yes.
But there are many, 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 many layers. So if we want to, we can just, decorate the cake, or we can go all the way down to the beginning and find out why this cake is tilting to one side or why it clogged up at one part of the cake, which is going to affect, the essence of the cake in the long run.
Ah, I see. So since buildings all have energy because building materials come from the earth, I'm wondering if, in our modern day, we have more and more synthetic materials. I'm kind of wondering, do they have less energy than the traditional wood and brick? Or I guess they all come from the earth somehow. I
would say to a degree, yes. But then we bring things into the home that also create energy, whether it's our furniture. If we're bringing natural resources like marble into the home, stainless steel, all those things, they all add up to a certain level of energy. One of the key things about making sure your home flows with positive energy is to make sure the less things that you have standing on the floor, the better. So, if you have a sofa or two sofas or a sectional, that's fine. But then don't clutter up every single corner with a table or another chair or pieces of this and a lamp. And, so keep the floor area as clear as possible, because the energy, as it dies, it lands on the floor. So I can go into a home and the energy can be very, very low in a home, but it is there. But my job is to bring that energy up off the carpet and to lift it up like heat, lift it up into every single part of the house, into every single corner, so that it has positive energy that then helps us become buoyant and we can do all the things that we need to do. So if we're feeling heavy and sad and depressed, it's the same kind of thing. Once we feel better, we start to lift our bodies up and we start to smile and our hair feels better and our eyes glow. And that's what Feng Shui does to a home.
I see.
Usually a sad house is a very depressed house. And also people leave their energy behind.
Oh.
So if I'm asked to look at a house that somebody wants to buy, there are a number of things that I'm looking for. I'm looking to see what's behind the house. I'm looking to see if there are electricity pylons attached to the house. which is very popular here in the Midwest. Mm-hmm. They have these big bunches of electricity attached to the side of the house, which is really bad for people living in the house. So, and I'm looking for that. But then I'm also looking to feel the essence of the people that were there before. So, why would a house be sold? There are a number of reasons, and maybe out of 10 times, they were for negative reasons. Somebody died, somebody lost their job, somebody's separated, somebody's divorced. There's all kinds of things that create negative energy. Well, when you move into that house, you're moving into that negative energy. So then my job is to clear that negative energy.
How do you diagnose what the energy is like in a house and adjust it or help change it so that it's more positive?
We place what you've probably heard of this, and everybody's heard of a Bagua map.
Oh, what's that?
Well, a Bagua map is basically a Feng Shui plan, like a floor plan of the floor plan. So it's laid over the top of the floor plan. So I simplified the Bagua map about 20 years ago, and you see it a lot on the internet, but what you find on the internet is a square Bagua map, and it actually wants to be a rectangular shape, and that's a truer form of Bagua. It's not the original Bagua. This is just sort of very, very helpful and is more simplified for the client so that they can relate to what part of the house that we're standing in. So if I point to the Bagua map that she's holding in her hand that I prepared for her, I'll say we're standing in wisdom. Oh. And she'll go, oh, I see. And then she sees the pattern and the puzzle coming together as we go from area to area in the house. So, and there are some things that you need to know about, that the master bedroom is a super sacred space. The kitchen is a super sacred space. So if you're building a house using Feng Shui principles, you want to make sure that those are in areas that are really beneficial to the family. So the idea behind the super sacred space is that in the bedroom, you're procreating, and in the kitchen, if you can afford to feed your children, then you're very wealthy. So there's lots of little nuances that are brought in. Ideally, if your front door is in the very middle of the building, that's fantastic. If it's to the left or the right, it means that you lose some of your Bagua map. So, for example, if the front door leans more to the right of the building as you're facing it, that means that you may have lost relationship, children, which is the inner child, and helpful people, which is where we honor our ancestors. So when that happens, then, my job is to bring in cures to simulate the missing pieces of the Bagua map in order to, and that's done in a number of different ways, which is another conversation. Mm-hmm. But if the front door is leaning more to the left, then you've got wealth missing, family missing, and wisdom missing.
Wow.
So again, those are things that it's important when you go to buy a house to make sure that those kinds of things are in the right place for you. Now, strangely enough, my last 3 houses, I have had no relationship, children, or helpful people for some reason. I didn't even think about it until, wow, this is what's going on. Oh. So it just happens that that's the way it's been. So, even I have boo-booed on that score.
Wow. Interesting. A lot goes into that. You'd mentioned that you had lived in Asia and you traveled extensively throughout your childhood. But what brought you from Asia all the way over to Cincinnati?
Well, I was living in London, mm-hmm. and I met an American in London through a mutual friend, and I did not want to come to Cincinnati in the worst way, but I did, and I've been here now for 26 years. It's sort of funny, but, when people ask that question, I usually retort, and I'll say it anyway. I say, oh, the wrong man, because it didn't work out, after 16 years anyway. But even that is sort of very interesting because people will say, well, you know so much about Feng Shui, how come you can't avoid all those bad things? Well, you can't. Feng Shui is not about protecting you. It's not a lucky charm, but it does help me and it helps everybody handle situations, because the positive energy that I develop for myself in my own home nurtures me and gives me the support that I need. And that's what Feng Shui does. It nurtures and supports.
I see. So when did you actually become an entrepreneur? Was it when you were already in Cincinnati?
Yes, it was actually the result of a very unexpected divorce. Oh. I'd been practicing for years, but not really professionally, but in my own homes and friends' homes and things like that. I didn't need to make a living out of it. I did it more as gifts to various people at that time. Mm-hmm. But then, after my divorce, it was a case of I need to provide for myself and support myself. And that's how it all began on a professional level. So I sort of hung out my shingle, and here we are, 18 years later, traveling all over the place, doing what I love the most, and that's feng shuiing people's homes and businesses.
Wow. Can you share a story or two about how you've helped people either in their homes or their businesses using feng shui?
Yes. I was approached a couple of years ago. This person wanted to employ me as a gift to her daughter because they had been trying for a baby and it wasn't working. They had gone down all the traditional routes of, getting pregnant, and nothing had worked. And I said, well, okay, but feng shui is not for this particularly, but we can probably clear whatever the blockage is that's stopping this natural thing to happen. So she said, well, I don't care if you could feng shui the house. Then my next question was only if your daughter and her husband are open to this, because a lot of people think feng shui is a little bit strange, They don't see it as a science. They're a little bit wary, and that's education. That's lack of education more than anything else. Anyway, the daughter was thrilled and delighted if I would go along and feng shui their home. So we did completely. I did all 3 floors, which we do anyway, but every single room and garage and outside was feng shuied. And they now have 2 children.
Wow.
The beauty of it is all I did was clear the blockages, the negative energy. And the negative energy actually was more in the basement, and it was in part of their health area, which is the very center of the Bagua map. So therefore, the very center of your home. Wow. A little part of their health area in the basement and children area in the basement. Now, the children area on a Bagua map actually deals with the inner child. Mm-hmm. It's our individual inner child. It's that little voice that doesn't get heard unless we learn for it to speak up as we get older. And also a feng shui consultation has a lot of conversations with the client and talking about things as we bring things up within the home. Sort of built into that feng shui consultation are at least 6 sessions. I call them sessions, mm-hmm. where we talk for an hour about anything at all that might just unblock something that we don't know is there. And that sort of helps again, once we've cleared the blockages inside ourselves, in our hearts and our minds, then we can start moving forward. So that's all inclusive in there as well.
I see. Wow, that's really powerful. And you not only work with people in their homes, you work with businesses and companies too with their buildings. Is that right?
I do. And it's something I love to do. There's so much negative energy within a company. It's not something that's to be blamed for. It's just you have a lot of people coming into a space with all their own perceptions, et cetera. Then most times they're working under stress. They're working under a lot of electricity. Mm-hmm. So, my job is to come in and help as much as I possibly can. And we use a lot in Feng Shui. We use color and original artwork and live plants and just sort of make a situation so much nicer, the environment so much nicer for people to live in and work in. Because, you're working in somewhere for maybe 8 hours. It should be as nice as your own home. Mm-hmm. And more people are beginning to understand that. There are some colors that are not compatible for people to work in. And this also goes, for children's bedrooms. It's very, very important. I get called in a lot to do children's bedrooms where children are being very difficult, but it's the environment of their bedrooms that's creating the upsets. So if I can come in and make the bedroom a lot more compatible to that child and a lot less cluttered and no electricity in the bedroom, and the colors are very soft and gentle, then they're more likely to go to bed and go to sleep and have good quality sleep. So, one of the companies that I've been working with here in Cincinnati, I've been working with them now for about 10 years. They started with 2 rooms, 2 offices, and they've now got something like 22 rooms on the top floor of this building. And they have just grown and grown and grown. And in their offices, I've used 12 different shades of blue. Mm-hmm. It's their corporate color, but we've also brought in a lot of blue in order to create this sea of energy for all the employees.
Interesting. And with businesses, is it the building or the environment that drives or impacts or builds the energy, or is it the other way around? Is it the people coming in, or is it how they interact?
It actually starts from when the building is built, the negative energy is built into the building.
Oh.
Because if the plumber's had an argument with his wife, then he's going to be, putting the plumbing in. He's going to put all his anger into that particular piece of plumbing. So, we can start from that. It's from the ground up. And the idea is to clear that as much as possible. And then people bring in the energy in all kinds of different directions as well. So, it could be people coming in from, relationships that have gone bad, or some kind of illness or sadness, or all of that is enveloped in that as well. And one of the things that I provide for people is that they could have an employee who's doing a fabulous job, but she's creating so much negative energy that there's like this big black cloud hanging over everybody and everybody's unhappy. Mm-hmm. So productivity is really bad. She can't be fired because she's not doing anything other than her job, but she has this very, very negative energy. So I'm called in to Feng Shui the offices, and people with very negative energy generally can't stand positive energy. And so they will naturally leave. So, it's best for her and it's best for the company, but nobody's been hurt in the process.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, I was always curious if you can convert that negative energy to positive energy, or if you literally just have to drive out the negative energy.
You have to lift it up and change it. Positive energy will eventually die. It's like a vase of flowers. Mm-hmm. A vase of flowers will eventually die. The idea is to bless that vase of flowers as we either take them out to the compost heap or we put them in the garbage, depending on what our circumstances are. Mm-hmm. But, it's like positive energy starts in one direction, but it will quickly die when things are cluttered, or there are piles of books and magazines or laundry and all kinds of other things. They all do create negative energy. So, we're doing it to ourselves on a daily basis, but how do we clear the building of negative energy and keep it up to date? So with Feng Shui, usually after a year, I go back and I tweak the building. I tweak for the client. I tweak their home, because things come in, people bring things into the space. People who don't know about Feng Shui will just stack up a pile of newspaper, and sooner or later you've got negative energy just dying in amongst those newspapers.
Interesting. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your work?
Okay, well, we have a website, and it is www.harmonicprosperity.com. Mm-hmm. And the other really good way to get hold of me is to call me on 513-315-6193 and leave a message with your name and your phone number, and I will call you back.
Wonderful. So I'll put your website and your phone number in the show notes of the podcast so that people can refer to it there too.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carolyn. And thank you for your interest. I think, the more I can talk about Feng Shui, the more people can understand what it is and how it is very complex, but it's such a delight. So it does so much to help you. And so thank you for this time.
Absolutely. Thank you for enlightening me more about this topic. I really enjoyed it.
Anytime.
Thanks for listening to Beyond 6 Seconds. Please help us spread the word about this podcast. Share it with a friend. Give us a shout out on your social media, or write a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. You can find all of our episodes on our website, www.beyond6seconds.com. Until next time.